Jake Thompson stood in the dim light of his cramped New York City apartment, the paint-splattered floorboards creaking beneath his weight as he paced back and forth. The walls, adorned with his art, felt like a cage closing in around him. Each canvas, a vibrant explosion of color and emotion, mocked him with the promise of success that seemed so far away. His heart raced with a mixture of frustration and desperation as he glanced at the pile of bills stacked precariously on the small kitchen table. Rent was due in 3 days, and his bank account had dwindled to the point of embarrassment. "Come on, Jake," he muttered to himself, running a hand through his tousled hair. "You're an artist. You're supposed to create, not drown in debt." He stopped by a large canvas that depicted a chaotic city skyline, the colors swirling together in a fevered frenzy. It was a reflection of his mind, a beautiful mess that no one seemed to want. He sighed, his breath heavy with the weight of unfulfilled dreams. Just then, his phone buzzed on the table, snapping him from his thoughts. He grabbed it, hoping for a message that might bring some good news, but it was just a reminder about the upcoming gallery opening downtown. "Another opportunity to showcase my work," he said aloud, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He had been invited to this event, but he knew that being part of the elite art world felt like trying to break into Fort Knox. The wealthy collectors were not interested in struggling artists like him. With a deep breath, Jake grabbed his jacket and headed out the door, determined to make an impression. The cool evening air hit him like a wave, invigorating and refreshing. He navigated the bustling streets of Manhattan, the bright lights and honking taxis a stark contrast to the darkness of his thoughts. As he walked, he imagined the sort of life he longed for, one filled with art, recognition, and perhaps even love, a life that seemed forever out of reach. The gallery was buzzing with energy when he arrived. Elegant people in tailored suits and shimmering dresses filled the space, sipping champagne and discussing the latest trends in contemporary art. Jake felt completely out of place in his slightly wrinkled button-up shirt and worn jeans. He stood to the side, observing the crowd, feeling like a ghost haunting a party where he didn't belong. "Hey there, you look like you could use a drink," a cheerful voice broke through his reverie. Jake turned to see a woman with striking features and an infectious smile approaching him. Her long, dark hair cascaded over her shoulders, and her eyes sparkled with a blend of mischief and warmth. Yeah, I suppose I could," Jake replied, a hint of surprise in his voice. "Thanks." "I'm Lily Harrington," she introduced herself, extending her hand. "And you are?" "Jake Thompson," he said, shaking her hand. The moment felt electric, like a jolt of inspiration coursing through him. There was something about her that drew him in, a palpable energy that made him feel alive. "So, Jake Thompson, what brings you here tonight?" Lily asked, her gaze steady and curious. "I'm an artist," he said, a touch of pride swelling in his chest. "Though I'm not sure anyone here knows that." "Artists are the soul of this city," she replied, her voice smooth and enchanting. "What do you create?" Jake hesitated, unsure whether to share the depth of his struggles or present a polished front. "Mostly abstract pieces. I like to explore emotions through color and form, but it's been a tough road." Lily's expression softened. "I get that. The art world can be brutal. But I believe in the power of creativity. It can change lives." As they spoke, the room around them faded, and Jake found himself captivated by her passion. They discussed their favorite artists, the struggles of making it in the big city, and the beauty of expression. The conversation flowed effortlessly, and Jake felt an undeniable connection forming between them. "Would you like to see some of my work?" he found himself asking, emboldened by her encouragement. "Absolutely, I'd love to," Lily replied, her enthusiasm infectious. "I'm always eager to discover new talent." Jake felt a flutter of hope in his chest. Maybe tonight could be the turning point he had been waiting for. They exchanged numbers, and he promised to send her some of his pieces to review. Over the next few weeks, Jake and Lily's connection deepened into a whirlwind romance. Each day brought new adventures, whether they were exploring art exhibitions, dining at upscale restaurants, or strolling through Central Park hand in hand. Lily introduced him to her world, a realm of luxury and sophistication that both excited and intimidated him. "I can't believe I'm actually doing this," Jake confessed one evening as they sat on a park bench, the sun setting in a spectacular display of oranges and pinks. He turned to Lily, his heart racing. "I've never felt this way about anyone before." Lily smiled, her eyes glinting with something that made Jake's stomach twist with anticipation. "Neither have I. It feels different with you, like we understand each other." Jake took a deep breath, feeling the thrill of what was unfolding between them. But beneath the surface, a seed of ambition began to sprout. As he watched Lily laugh, her beauty radiant in the twilight, he couldn't help but envision a future where their lives intertwined in a tapestry of wealth and success. The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. "Can I ask you something?" he ventured, his voice steady but laced with vulnerability. "Of course," Lily replied, her expression open and encouraging. "What do you see for your future?" "I mean, beyond the parties and events," he said, searching her gaze for sincerity. Lily paused, considering his question. "I want to make a difference, to use my resources to help others, but I also want to enjoy life. It's fleeting, you know?" Her words struck a chord within him. Jake imagined a life filled with luxury and comfort, the kind he had always dreamed of but never thought possible. His heart raced with the possibilities, and the allure of her wealth began to weave itself into the fabric of his desires. "Do you think—" He hesitated, a plan forming in his mind. "Do you think we could build something together? Art, philanthropy, a life?" Lily's eyes sparkled with intrigue. "I think we could create something beautiful together, Jake, I truly do." And in that moment, as the sun dipped below the skyline, Jake felt the weight of the world shift. He was no longer just a struggling artist. He was a man on the brink of something extraordinary. With Lily by his side, the life he had always dreamed of was within reach. But as his heart soared with ambition, a tiny voice in the back of his mind whispered a warning. Was he falling for Lily, or was he merely falling for the idea of her fortune? Unbeknownst to Jake, the path he was about to tread was fraught with peril, and the complexities of love and ambition would soon intertwine in ways he could never have imagined. The allure of wealth was seductive, but the price of deception would soon reveal itself in the most unexpected ways. As he gazed into Lily's eyes, a swirl of emotions danced between them, setting the stage for a dramatic journey that would test the very essence of their connection. Under a sprawling canvas of stars, Jake Thompson knelt on the cool grass, the night air thick with anticipation. The city skyline shimmered in the distance, a reminder of the life he had yearned for, and the one he now stood on the precipice of claiming. Beside him, Lily Harrington gazed up at the stars, her profile illuminated by the soft glow of the moon. In that moment, Jake felt like he was part of a fairy tale, one where he was both the hero and the villain. "Lily," he began, his voice steady yet laced with an undercurrent of emotion. "From the moment we met, you've brought color into my life. You've made me feel things I thought I'd never feel again." He took a deep breath, the air heavy with the scent of jasmine from the nearby garden, and continued, "I want to spend the rest of my life with you." Lily turned to him, her eyes wide and shimmering with a mixture of surprise and delight. "Jake, are you serious?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He nodded, his heart racing as he pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. The moonlight caught the edges, revealing a delicate diamond ring nestled inside. "Will you marry me?" he asked, his voice more confident now, the weight of his words hanging in the night air. "Oh, Jake," she exclaimed, her hands flying to her mouth. "I can't believe this. Yes, 1,000 times, yes." She threw her arms around him and he held her tightly, feeling a rush of triumph mixed with an unsettling twist of guilt. As she pulled back, her face radiated joy and he forced a smile, battling the internal conflict that threatened to surface. "I can't wait to tell everyone," she said, her enthusiasm infectious. "Let's enjoy this moment first," he suggested, hoping to keep the reality of his intentions locked away for just a little longer. They spent the rest of the evening wrapped in each other's arms, sharing dreams of a future that felt bright and endless. Yet in the back of Jake's mind, a nagging voice whispered reminders of his true motives. He was marrying her, yes, but not out of pure love. The thought made his heart ache, but he brushed it aside, focusing instead on her laughter and the warmth of her presence. The following days passed in a blur of wedding planning and social engagements. Jake found himself immersed in a world of opulence he had only ever dreamed of, a stark contrast to his former life of struggle and uncertainty. Lily introduced him to her circle of wealthy friends, and he reveled in the admiration he received as her fiancé. "Jake, darling, you simply must wear that tailored suit to the gala next week," Lily insisted one afternoon, her eyes sparkling with excitement as they browsed through a high-end boutique. "You'll look absolutely divine." "Are you sure it's not too much?" he asked, examining the price tag with a gulp. "Not at all. You deserve this," she replied, her hand brushing against his reassuringly. "We're going to be a power couple, and I want everyone to know it." Her confidence was intoxicating, and Jake found himself swept away in her enthusiasm, momentarily forgetting the web of deception he was weaving. But as the wedding day approached, so did the weight of his guilt, pressing down on him like an anchor. The ceremony was nothing short of extravagant. Set in a grand ballroom adorned with crystal chandeliers and overflowing floral arrangements, guests mingled in designer attire, sipping champagne and laughing in a symphony of high society chatter. Jake stood at the altar, dressed impeccably in a tailored suit, but he felt like an imposter among the elite. As Lily walked down the aisle, radiant in her designer gown, Jake's breath caught in his throat. She looked every bit the fairy tale bride, her smile wide and genuine. Yet, as he took her hand, a wave of unease washed over him. He remembered the reasons he had pursued her: the money, the lifestyle, the escape from his past. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the officiant declared, and the guests erupted into applause. Jake kissed Lily, and a thrill of exhilaration rushed through him. But as they turned to face their audience, the applause felt like a mockery of the truth he was hiding. That evening, during the reception, Jake mingled with the guests, slipping into his role as the charming husband. He laughed at jokes, raised glasses in toasts, and twirled Lily on the dance floor, all while his mind raced with thoughts of the life he had chosen. "Jake, darling, you're such a natural at this," Lily beamed, her cheeks flushed with happiness. "I'm so glad we're starting this journey together." He smiled back, though it felt strained. "Me too," he managed, wishing he could fully embrace the moment. Later, as they stole a quiet moment away from the festivities, Jake turned to Lily, the weight of what he was hiding pressing heavily on his chest. "Lily, can I ask you something?" "Of course, anything," she replied, her eyes bright with curiosity. "What do you know about the Harrington family's past? I've heard whispers about accidents involving previous heirs," he ventured, choosing his words carefully. Lily's expression shifted, a flicker of something unreadable crossing her face. "Oh, that's just family law," she said, dismissing it with a wave of her hand. "Every family has its stories, right? Superstitions and such, they're not to be taken seriously." Jake nodded, but the unease lingered. He had heard tales of tragedy, of heirs who had fallen victim to mysterious accidents, and though Lily brushed it off, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. As the evening wore on, he tried to focus on the joy of their union, yet the shadows of doubt loomed larger. The glitz and glamour of the Harrington lifestyle dazzled him, and he found himself enjoying the lavish gifts and attention. But amid the glittering facade, a nagging feeling whispered that he was stepping into a world fraught with dangers he couldn't yet comprehend. "I love you, Jake," Lily said softly, her eyes searching his. "I can't wait to build our future together." "I love you too," he replied, though the words felt hollow. In the following days, Jake lost himself in the whirlwind of married life, attending charity events and social gatherings. He reveled in the luxury that surrounded him, but felt increasingly like a man walking a tightrope. The further he delved into Lily's world, the more he felt the weight of his deceit, and with it, a growing fear of what lay ahead. As he sipped a glass of wine at a gala one evening, surrounded by laughter and chatter, Jake couldn't help but wonder what he had truly signed up for. The allure of wealth and status was intoxicating, but beneath it all lay shadows that threatened to engulf him. He was trapped in a gilded cage, and with every passing moment, he felt the walls closing in around him. He glanced at Lily, who sparkled in conversation with their guests, her laughter ringing like music. For a fleeting moment, he wished he could forget the secrets lurking just beneath the surface. But as the night wore on, the realization settled in. He had chosen this path, and now he would have to navigate the treacherous waters he had willingly dived into. As Jake Thompson adjusted to his new life as Mr. Harrington, he found himself enveloped by a world that sparkled yet felt eerily hollow. The lavish parties, designer suits and gourmet meals were intoxicating at first, but the novelty began to wane, revealing a stark reality of superficial friendships and relentless ambition. It was a world where smiles often masked ulterior motives, and Jake felt a growing sense of isolation amid the laughter and clinking glasses. He stood at the edge of a vast rooftop terrace overlooking the Manhattan skyline, the city lights twinkling like stars scattered across the night. With a glass of expensive champagne in hand, he watched as Lily mingled effortlessly with their guests, her laughter ringing out like music. She looked stunning in a fitted emerald gown that accentuated her figure, her hair cascading down in soft waves. Yet, despite her radiance, Jake felt an unsettling emptiness inside. The party was for a charity event, one of the many that Lily had orchestrated since their marriage. While he admired her passion for philanthropy, he couldn't shake the feeling that it was all a performance, a way of maintaining her status among the elite. He turned his gaze back to the sprawling city, reminding himself of the dreams that had once fueled him, but now those dreams felt overshadowed by the weight of his choices. "Jake," Lily's voice called out, pulling him from his reverie. She approached him, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "You have to meet the Johnsons. They're major donors, and I think they could help us with our next project." "Sure," he replied, forcing a smile. "Lead the way." As they walked through the crowd, Jake couldn't help but notice how Lily commanded attention. She was a natural, effortlessly engaging with everyone around her, her charm disarming even the most hardened socialites. The couple they approached, an older man and woman, were impeccably dressed, their laughter rich and warm, but Jake sensed the underlying tension in their conversation. He was reminded once again that in this world, nothing was as simple as it seemed. "Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, I'd like you to meet my husband, Jake Thompson," Lily introduced him, her voice bright and welcoming. "Ah, the artist," Mr. Johnson exclaimed, extending a hand. "I've seen some of your work. Quite impressive. But tell me, what do you think about the current art scene?" Jake felt a sudden rush of anxiety. He was an artist who had struggled to make a name for himself, not a socialite fluent in the language of wealth. "I think art is evolving," he replied, searching for the right words. "There's a blending of styles that creates something fresh and exciting." "Fresh and exciting?" Mrs. Johnson echoed, raising an eyebrow. "Do you mean to say that tradition is being cast aside? That's a bold statement." Jake's heart raced as he realized he was treading on dangerous ground. Not cast aside, but perhaps reinterpreted. Art should challenge us to think differently, to see the world through new lenses. Lily's eyes sparkled with pride, but he could see the subtle shift in the Johnsons' demeanor. They exchanged glances, their smiles fading slightly. He felt a pang of embarrassment, aware that he was still an outsider trying to fit into a world that didn't quite welcome him. After a few more strained exchanges, the Johnsons excused themselves and Jake sighed in relief. "I don't think they like me much," he muttered, glancing sideways at Lily. "Oh, don't be silly," she replied, her tone light. "They're just not used to someone who thinks outside the box. You'll win them over eventually." "Maybe," he said, unconvinced. "But it's hard to feel comfortable here, Lily. Sometimes I wonder if I belong." Lily took a step closer, her expression softening. "You belong with me, Jake. That's what matters. Just give it time, you'll see." But as the evening progressed, Jake felt more like an actor playing a role than a genuine participant in this extravagant life. He watched as Lily moved effortlessly from one conversation to another, her charm working wonders. Yet, beneath the surface, he couldn't shake the feeling that their marriage was a delicate balancing act, an act that could unravel at any moment. Days turned into weeks and Jake found himself swept into a whirlwind of charity galas and fundraising events. Lily had a knack for turning even the most mundane gatherings into grand affairs, complete with elaborate decorations and high-profile guests. While he had initially been captivated by her enthusiasm, he began to feel suffocated by the relentless pace of their new life. One afternoon, as he sat in their lavish home, Jake decided to take a break from the chaos. He wandered into Lily's office, a space filled with elegant furnishings and an impressive collection of art. His eyes were drawn to her computer, where a series of documents lay open on the screen. Curiosity piqued, he approached the desk, his heart racing with a mix of intrigue and apprehension. As he leaned closer, he caught sight of a file labeled Trust Fund Strategies. He hesitated for a moment, knowing that he shouldn't pry, but the title pulled him in. With a quick glance around to ensure he was alone, he clicked on the file. The documents detailed intricate plans for manipulating investments and leveraging the family fortune to secure their wealth. Jake's breath caught in his throat as he read through the lines. There were references to potential threats to the family's financial empire, former associates, distant relatives, and even vague notes about necessary sacrifices. His stomach churned as he realized the extent of Lily's ambition. "Jake?" Lily's voice interrupted his thoughts, and he quickly closed the file, heart pounding. She stepped into the room, her expression shifting from surprise to concern. "What are you doing in here?" "Just looking around," he stammered, forcing a casual tone that felt painfully insincere. Lily narrowed her eyes, clearly unconvinced. "You shouldn't be in my office without permission. It's private." "I'm sorry," he replied, guilt washing over him. "I didn't mean to intrude." Her expression softened slightly, but Jake couldn't shake the feeling that he had stumbled upon something far more significant than he had anticipated. The revelation of her manipulative plans lingered in his mind, a dark shadow overshadowing his already complicated feelings for her. As the days passed, Jake wrestled with the knowledge he had uncovered. He felt trapped between two worlds, the lavish lifestyle he had always dreamed of and the unsettling reality of Lily's ambition. He began to question whether the love he felt for her was genuine or merely a reflection of the world they inhabited. The lines between right and wrong blurred, and he grappled with his conscience, unsure of what to do with the information he had found. One evening, while they sat in their opulent living room, the weight of unspoken words hung heavy in the air. Jake shifted on the plush sofa, stealing glances at Lily as she flipped through a magazine, her features illuminated by the soft glow of the lamp. He felt an overwhelming urge to confront her about what he had discovered, but fear held him back. What if she denied it? What if she turned the tables on him, accusing him of being the one who was after her fortune? "Jake," Lily's voice broke through his thoughts and he met her gaze, startled. "What's wrong? You seem distant." "I'm just thinking," he replied, his heart racing. "About us, about everything." Her brow furrowed, a flicker of concern crossing her face. "I know this life can feel overwhelming sometimes, but we're in this together, remember?" "Together," he echoed, the word feeling heavy on his tongue. He wanted to believe it, but the shadows of doubt loomed larger with each passing day. As he pondered the path ahead, Jake realized that he was at a crossroads. He could confront Lily, risk shattering the fragile foundation of their marriage, or he could bury his feelings and succumb to the life he had always dreamed of. But deep down, he knew that the allure of wealth would never fill the void created by deception. Jake stood in the spacious living room of the Harrington estate, the opulence around him feeling both intoxicating and suffocating. The chandeliers sparkled overhead, casting a warm glow on the rich mahogany furniture and the lavish art pieces that adorned the walls. Yet despite the beauty of his surroundings, his heart raced with anxiety. He had just unearthed a file on Lily's computer that shattered the illusion he had crafted about their life together. It was time to confront her. As he paced, he replayed their last moments together in his mind, The way she had smiled at him, the warmth of her touch, and the laughter that had once felt so genuine. But that laughter now felt tainted, as if he had been a fool to believe in it. Steeling himself, he walked toward the grand staircase, his mind made up. He needed answers. "Lily," he called out, his voice echoing through the vastness of the house. The sound of rustling fabric came from the study, and he followed it, finding her seated at a polished desk, her back to him. The golden light from the window highlighted her long hair, but the sight did little to calm his racing heart. She turned, her expression shifting from surprise to guardedness. "Jake, what's wrong?" she asked, her brow furrowing as she noticed the tension in his posture. He inhaled deeply, gathering his thoughts. "We need to talk about what I found on your computer." Lily's demeanor changed instantly, her eyes narrowing. "What do you mean?" she replied, her tone sharp. "The file, Lily, the one detailing your plans for the family wealth." He stepped closer, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. "You're not the person I thought you were." At his words, the color drained from her face. "You went through my things?" she asked, incredulity mixed with irritation. "How dare you invade my privacy?" "Privacy?" Jake retorted, unable to contain the frustration that bubbled to the surface. "You're making plans that could affect not only our lives but many others. How can I just stand by and pretend I don't know?" Lily stood up, her composure faltering. "You think you understand me? You think you know what I'm doing? You're just a struggling artist who married into wealth. You don't get to judge me." "I married you because I love you, or at least I thought I did," he shot back, his voice rising. "But now it feels like I'm just another pawn in your game." "Game?" She laughed bitterly. "You think this is a game? I'm protecting what's mine, Jake. You of all people should understand the importance of security. You've lived without it your entire life." The room was thick with tension, their voices echoing off the walls like a violent storm. Jake stepped back, his heart pounding. Is that really what this is about? Money? Control? Or is it about fear? Fear of losing everything? Lily's expression softened for a moment, revealing a glimpse of vulnerability. "You don't know what it's like to have everything taken from you," she said quietly, her voice trembling. "My family has a history of losing their wealth, and I refuse to be another victim." "Victim or manipulator?" Jake pressed, his heart aching for her, but also feeling a surge of anger. "You're playing with people's lives, Lily. You're sabotaging anyone who poses a threat to your fortune." "Don't you dare accuse me of that," she snapped, her voice rising again. "You're just like the rest of them, thinking I'm some spoiled heiress who doesn't know what she's doing. But I've seen what happens when you let your guard down. I won't let it happen to me." "Maybe you should try trusting someone for once," he countered, his voice softening. "You're pushing me away, and I'm not your enemy. I want to help you, but I can't if you won't let me in." Lily looked away, her jaw tight as she fought back tears. "You don't understand," she whispered, almost to herself. "It's not just about me. It's about my family's legacy." "Then let me help you protect it, but not by tearing others down," he implored, taking a step closer. "There's got to be a better way than this." Silence hung between them, thick and suffocating, as they both grappled with the weight of their truths. Jake could feel the walls that had built up around her heart, fortified by years of betrayal and fear. "I don't want to lose you, Jake," she finally admitted, her voice breaking. "But if you knew what I know, you might understand why I have to do this." Jake's heart twisted at her words. He had wanted her to be this innocent, loving woman, but now he was faced with the reality that she was a product of her environment, shaped by the darkness of her family's past. "Then tell me," he urged, his voice low and earnest. "Tell me what you're afraid of. I can't promise I'll agree with everything you've done, but I can promise to stand by you if you're honest with me." Lily hesitated, her gaze slipping to the ground as if the weight of her secrets was too heavy to bear. I can't," she finally whispered. "I can't show you the darkness I keep hidden." Then I have to gather evidence, Jake declared, feeling a resolve settle within him. I can't stay in this marriage under false pretenses. I need to know the truth, and if it means exposing you, then so be it. Her eyes widened in shock, and for a moment he thought he saw fear flicker across her features. You wouldn't, she said, her voice trembling. I will, he replied, his heart heavy but resolute. I won't be a part of this charade anymore. Jake, please, Lily pleaded, stepping forward. You don't understand what you're putting at risk. If you expose me, you expose yourself too. You think you're just a pawn, but you're in this game now. You could lose everything you've gained. Maybe that's the price I have to pay for my integrity, he shot back, his heart aching at the thought of losing her, but knowing he couldn't compromise his values. I won't be trapped in your web of deceit. As he turned to leave, he felt her presence behind him, a whirlwind of emotions swirling in the air between them. Think about what you're doing, Jake, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. You may regret it. He paused at the door, the weight of her words hanging in the air like a storm cloud. I'm already regretting the person I've become by staying silent, he replied, stepping out into the dimly lit hallway. I will find the truth, Lily, one way or another. With that, he walked away, determination coursing through him as he prepared to gather the evidence he needed. The luxurious life he had once coveted now felt like a gilded cage, and he was ready to break free no matter the cost. As Jake Thompson leaned back in his chair, the dim light of his makeshift study illuminated a series of documents spread out across the table. His heart raced as he reviewed the evidence he had meticulously gathered over the past few days. The meticulous notes, the bank statements, and the correspondence between Lily Harrington and her various associates painted a picture that was as chilling as it was revealing. Each document felt like a dagger to his heart, twisting deeper with every passing moment. Lily had always been charming, the life of every party, and yet as Jake sifted through the evidence, a different image emerged. One of a woman who wielded her wealth like a sword, cutting down anyone who dared to threaten her empire. He recalled the subtle glances she exchanged with her friends, the quiet but pointed conversations that hinted at alliances and betrayals. She had surrounded herself with a fortress of loyalty, but it was a loyalty born from fear rather than love. He picked up one of the papers, a letter detailing a series of incidents that had befallen her former friends, acquaintances who had dared to challenge her, or even just drift too close to her wealth. A car accident here, a financial crisis there. Each incident seemed more than coincidental. Jake felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He had thought of Lily as a kindred spirit, someone who shared his passion for art and culture, but now he was staring at the cold, hard truth of her machinations. Jake? A voice interrupted his thoughts, and he looked up to see Lily standing in the doorway. She looked radiant, dressed in a flowing silk robe that accentuated her figure, her hair cascading over her shoulders like sunlight, but there was a glint in her eye that made him uneasy. What are you working on so late? Just some sketches, he replied, his voice steadier than he felt. He quickly pushed the documents out of sight, attempting to mask his growing anxiety. You know how it is. An artist's work is never done. Lily stepped into the room, her gaze sweeping over the table before settling on him. You're always working, aren't you? Why don't you come to bed? We can talk about those charity galas coming up. I know how much you love them. There it was, the bait, the promise of her world glittering and glamorous, as if she could distract him from the ugly truth he was uncovering. Jake forced a smile, trying to hide the turmoil swirling within him. Sure, in a bit, I just want to finish this piece first. All right, but don't take too long, she said, her smile brightening, yet there was something calculating in her eyes. You know how much I love having you by my side. As she left the room, Jake's resolve wavered. He felt the weight of her expectations pressing down on him. Could he confront her? Did he have the strength to face the woman he loved? Or the woman he had thought he loved, armed with the knowledge of her manipulations? The thought of losing her, of losing the life he had imagined, clawed at him. But the truth was a relentless beast, and it clawed back. The next few days passed in a blur. Jake immersed himself in his art, using it as both an escape and a weapon. Every brushstroke was imbued with the tension of his situation, each canvas a silent witness to his inner conflict. Yet, as he worked, the evidence loomed over him like a spectre, and the thrill of luxury began to tarnish. He could no longer ignore the gnawing doubt. One evening, as they returned from yet another gala, Jake couldn't hold back any longer. The glint of chandeliers and the laughter of the elite faded into the background as he turned to Lily in the car. "I need to talk to you about something serious." Lily glanced at him, her brow furrowing slightly. "What's on your mind, Jake? You look pale." "It's about, everything. About your family, your past. I found some things that don't sit right with me," he said, his voice trembling slightly. He could feel the air thicken between them, the tension palpable. "What things?" she asked, her tone shifting, curiosity mingling with caution. Jake took a deep breath, the words tumbling out. "I found documents suggesting that you've been involved in sabotaging former friends and even family members. I don't understand, Lily. Why would you do something like this?" For a moment, silence enveloped them. The hum of the engine was the only sound as Lily's expression transformed from surprise to something colder, more guarded. "You shouldn't have gone digging into things that don't concern you, Jake," she said, her voice low and steady, almost menacing. "What do you mean?" Jake pressed, his heart racing. "This is my life too. I married you, and I deserve to know who I'm with." Lily's eyes narrowed, and Jake could see the flicker of ire behind her carefully controlled facade. "You think you deserve to know? You think you can stand in judgment of me? You have no idea what it takes to maintain this wealth, this lifestyle. There are threats everywhere." "What threats?" Jake demanded, his frustration boiling over. "Is it worth destroying the lives of others to protect your own?" Lily leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper that sent chills down his spine. "You don't know what you're talking about. If you're not with me, then you're against me. And trust me, Jake, I can make things very difficult for you." The implication of her words struck him like a blow. He had thought he could confront her, thought that love might bridge the chasm between them. But now he stood on the precipice of a realization. This was not merely a matter of love, it was a matter of survival. "I trusted you," he said, his voice cracking. "I thought we were building a life together, not a fortress of lies." Lily's expression softened for a fleeting moment, revealing a flicker of vulnerability, but it was quickly masked by a hardened resolve. "You think you're the only one who feels trapped. I'm doing what I must to protect what's mine. If you can't understand that, then I don't know if this marriage can survive." Jake felt the weight of her words settle like a shroud over him. The warmth of their shared memories faded, leaving only the cold reality of who she truly was. "Maybe it's better if I find out the truth, whatever it may be. I won't live in the shadows of your deceit," he said, his voice steadying with newfound determination. Lily's eyes flashed with anger and fear. "You think you can just walk away, that you can turn your back on me? I made you, Jake. You owe me everything." The finality of her statement echoed in the car, and Jake felt a wave of hopelessness wash over him. He was trapped, ensnared in a web of ambition and lies with no clear path to freedom. But he also realized that perhaps it was time to stop being a pawn in her game. The thought of confronting the truth, no matter how painful, began to crystallize in his mind. "Maybe you're right," he said, his voice calm despite the storm raging within. "Maybe I need to see just how deep this deception goes, because if I'm not careful, I could lose everything too." Lily's expression shifted, her eyes widening with a mix of shock and fury. "You don't know who you're dealing with, Jake. You'll regret this." But Jake could only stare back, a sense of resolve washing over him. He might be trapped, but he would not remain a victim. The path ahead was uncertain, but he would find a way to confront the darkness that surrounded them both. With that thought, a single question lingered in his mind. How much longer could he endure the lies before they consumed him entirely? Jake Thompson stood in front of his easel, the vibrant colors of his palette staring back at him. Yet his mind was clouded with thoughts of Lily Harrington. The sunlight streamed through the large windows of his studio, casting long shadows on the wooden floor, but the warmth did little to thaw the chill that had settled in his chest. He had taken a drastic step, one that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. He had anonymously tipped off the authorities about Lily's illegal dealings. The weight of that decision pressed heavily upon him, stirring a storm of conflicting emotions. As he mixed shades of blue and gold, he couldn't help but replay the moment in his mind. The phone call had been simple enough. A few whispered words to the tip line, a brief description of Lily's operations, and then silence. But every second since had been fraught with anxiety. What if she found out? What if the investigation turned against him? The very thought made his stomach twist. "Jake!" A voice broke through his reverie, pulling him back to the present. It was Sam, his closest friend and fellow artist, stepping into the studio with a concerned expression. "You okay, man? You've been looking like a ghost lately." Jake forced a smile, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Just thinking about some stuff." "Stuff like what?" "You can talk to me, you know." Sam leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, his brow furrowed. "Is it about Lily? I mean, you've been acting weird ever since the wedding." Jake inhaled deeply and set his brush down, the bristles stained with paint. "It's complicated, Sam. I don't even know where to start." "Why don't you start at the beginning? You can't just keep everything bottled up. It's not healthy." Sam stepped fully into the room, concern etched on his face. With a sigh, Jake relayed the story. The whirlwind romance, the marriage, the hidden manipulations he had uncovered. He described the moment he discovered the file on her computer, the cold dread that had washed over him as he realized Lily was not the woman he thought she was. Sam listened intently, nodding along, his expression shifting from confusion to concern. "Man, that's heavy. So you really think she's been scamming people?" Sam asked, his voice low. "I have to believe it. I found evidence that she's been sabotaging anyone who posed a threat to her fortune. I can't stay complicit in that." Jake's voice cracked slightly, revealing the turmoil beneath his composed exterior. Sam rubbed the back of his neck, considering Jake's words. "But calling the cops? Isn't that a bit extreme? What if it blows up in your face?" "I know, but I felt like I had no choice. She's dangerous, Sam, and I can't keep living this lie. I thought marrying her would bring me happiness, but instead, I'm suffocating." Jake's gaze fell to the floor, the weight of his confession hanging in the air. Sam's expression softened. "I get it, but you need to be ready for the fallout. If she gets arrested, it might not just affect her, it could ruin you too." "I'm aware," Jake said, his voice firm despite the tremor that ran through him. "But I'd rather face the consequences than continue down this path of deception." The two friends shared a moment of silence, the only sound the soft rustle of paintbrushes against canvas. Jake felt a flicker of hope that perhaps he could find a way out of this mess. He had to believe that honesty would lead him to a better place. Days turned into a blur as the investigation unfolded. News reports began surfacing about Lily Harrington, her empire of wealth, and the fraudulent activities that had been uncovered. Jake watched in a mix of horror and relief as the media painted her as a master manipulator, a woman who had exploited her privilege for personal gain. The headlines blared, and with every article, Jake's heart sank deeper into a pit of guilt. "Jake, have you seen this?" Sam burst into the studio one afternoon, holding a newspaper aloft, its headlines screaming about Lily's arrest. "They got her! She's being charged with fraud!" Jake's stomach churned as he took the paper from Sam's hands, his eyes scanning the article. There she was, smiling in a designer gown, her image juxtaposed with the words that accused her of a litany of crimes. "I can't believe it's come to this," he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. "Are you okay?" Sam asked, his tone serious. "This has to be tough for you." Jake looked up, meeting Sam's gaze. "It is, but I knew this could happen. I can't say I'm surprised. I just didn't expect it to feel so hollow. Because you loved her, Sam probed gently. I thought I did, Jake replied, his voice thick with emotion. But now I'm not even sure if I knew who she really was. I was so blinded by ambition and the allure of wealth that I ignored the signs. Jake's mind wandered to the moments they had shared, the laughter, the passion, the dreams of a life together. But now, those memories felt tainted, overshadowed by betrayal and manipulation. He had wanted to believe that love could conquer all, but it appeared that greed had cast a longer shadow. Later that evening, Jake stood in front of his easel again, but this time he felt a strange sense of clarity wash over him. He picked up his brush, letting the strokes flow freely, pouring his emotions onto the canvas. The colors danced under his fingertips, vivid and alive, reflecting the turmoil and the catharsis he was experiencing. Art is my true passion, he murmured to himself, the realization settling in his chest. Not money or status. It's the only thing that brings me joy without strings attached. As he painted, the weight on his shoulders began to lift. He felt liberated, as if the act of creation was cleansing him of the deceit he had become entangled in. It was a reminder of who he truly was, far removed from the world of deceit and manipulation that had consumed him. Days turned into weeks, and as Lily faced the consequences of her actions, Jake found a renewed sense of purpose. He began to reconnect with his art community, collaborating with fellow artists and showcasing his work in local galleries. The thrill of creating without the burden of ambition felt like a breath of fresh air. One evening, Jake stood before a new canvas, vibrant colors swirling as he poured his heart into it. He spoke aloud, almost as if to an audience. True wealth lies not in what we possess, but in who we are and what we create. I choose authenticity over deception, love over greed. With each stroke, he felt a sense of freedom, a release from the chains that had bound him to a life of pretense. As he stepped back to admire his work, he realized that he had finally found peace within himself. The vibrant colors on the canvas reflected not just his journey, but a commitment to a life free from deceit, a life where he could embrace his true passions and values. Jake smiled, knowing that while the road ahead might still be uncertain, he was ready to face it with honesty and integrity. In the end, he had learned that the true meaning of wealth was not found in riches, but in the authenticity of the life he chose to live.